When I got that message, my hands went cold. Go live with strangers, Mom. Those were the exact words my son Ethan had sent me. No greeting, no explanation, just that. I stared at the screen, unable to believe that the boy I raised with my whole soul had just told me to leave my own home. The same home I had built brick by brick alongside his late father. My throat tightened as I reread his message, hoping somehow the words would change. They didn't. I could still hear the echo of his voice when he was little, calling me Mommy, asking for one more bedtime story. And now, the same lips that once called me his world were telling me to leave mine. The house was silent. My cane rested against the wall, the afternoon light cutting through the lace curtains, falling over the framed pictures of our life together. Ethan's graduation photo stood at the center. I had polished that frame so many times it gleamed brighter than anything else in the room. I had been proud that day, my only son, the first in our family to graduate from an Ivy League college. But now, pride felt like a knife twisting slowly in my chest. I sat down at the kitchen table, my coffee cold, untouched. I knew what his message meant. He wanted me out. Ever since he had married Claire, things had changed. She had a way of speaking that was always sweet but sharp enough to cut. "Oh, Mrs. Rivers, you must be so tired living in a big house all alone," she'd said once, smiling while she rearranged the flowers I had already placed perfectly in the vase. Tired? No. Lonely sometimes, yes. But tired of my own home? Never. I had tried to stay out of their way when they moved into the mansion 2 years ago, after Ethan insisted, "Mom, you shouldn't live alone after Dad's gone." I agreed, not because I needed help, but because I thought we'd heal together. I didn't realize that when he said, "we," he meant just him and Claire. Claire had slowly taken over everything. The kitchen, the garden, even the way the furniture was arranged. Modern style, she'd called it, replacing the warm oak table with something made of glass that looked fragile and cold, just like her smile. I never said a word. I told myself Ethan was happy, and that was enough. But happiness built on disrespect never lasts. The message had arrived just after lunch. I had spent the morning cleaning the guest room for Ethan's friends who were visiting that weekend. He hadn't told me much, just that he wanted to host them for a small reunion. I had prepared everything perfectly, as I always did. I even made his favorite apple pie, the one his father used to bake on Sundays. I thought maybe we'd all sit together, talk, and laugh the way families should. But that message, it shattered every hope I had left. I didn't reply right away. I simply walked to the window and looked at the garden I had spent 30 years tending. The roses were blooming beautifully this season. My husband had planted the first bush himself, saying, "Every rose will remind you of us." I could almost hear his voice then, soft but steady, like he was standing right beside me. That night, when Ethan came home, I asked him directly, "What did you mean by your message?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Mom, Claire and I think it's best if you moved into a senior community. You'll have company there, people your age. It's not healthy staying here alone when we're so busy." Busy. That was his word for abandoning his mother. "Ethan," I said quietly, "this is my home." He sighed like I was a child who didn't understand simple logic. "No, Mom, it's our home now. Claire and I have plans. We're thinking of converting the guest rooms for rental suites. You'll be more comfortable somewhere else." The words "our home" stung. Every brick in that house had been paid for by my late husband's hands and my double shifts at the diner. But I didn't argue. There are moments when silence says more than 1,000 words. And that night, my silence screamed. When he left the room, I walked up to the attic and opened the old chest my husband had built. Inside were letters, photos, and a small envelope labeled, "For rainy days." My husband had always said, "If life ever turns against you, open this." My hands trembled as I tore the envelope. Inside was a single key and a note. "This key is your reminder, Margaret. Never forget you built this life. No one can take it from you." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch under the stars, thinking about how far I had let things go. I had given everything to my son, my time, my love, my savings. And in return, he gave me an eviction notice and a text message. But the next morning, something inside me shifted. I realized that I might be old, but I wasn't helpless. I had something Ethan didn't: wisdom, patience, and the ability to turn pain into power. If he wanted me gone, fine. But I wasn't leaving quietly. As the sun rose, I made myself a cup of coffee and started planning. I knew Ethan would be away for a few days, attending a conference with Claire. That would give me enough time to set everything in motion. I took out a notebook and began writing down names, numbers, and a few very specific ideas. If he thought his mansion was his, he was about to learn the truth the hard way. Before leaving for his trip, Ethan handed me a brochure for Silver Pines Senior Living. "Mom, they have game nights, yoga, and beautiful rooms. You'll love it there," he said cheerfully, as if he were doing me a favor. I smiled faintly. "You might be right, Ethan. Maybe a change of scenery is exactly what I need." He hugged me quickly, barely a brush of his arms, and left without noticing the look in my eyes, because in that moment, my heart wasn't breaking anymore. It was hardening. By the time his car disappeared down the road, my plan was already in motion. That night, as I sat alone in the guest room of a friend's house, my phone buzzed again. "Mom, don't make this harder than it is. You'll be fine. I'll send you a bit of money each month." His message was short, casual, as if he was doing me a favor. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my chest tight. My hands trembled as I typed, "Ethan, I raised you. I gave you everything I had. How can you talk to me like this?" But I deleted the message before hitting send. There was no point. He wasn't listening anymore. For the first few days, I stayed quiet. I told my friend I'd figure something out. Inside, I was shattered. Not because of the loss of the house, but because of the loss of my son's heart. That mansion was never about wealth to me. It was about family, love, and all the sacrifices that built it. As I sat watching the sun rise through the thin curtains, a thought began to take shape, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. I realized that Ethan needed to learn what value truly meant. Not money, not property, but gratitude and humility. The next week, I returned to the house. Ethan was gone, probably out celebrating his new freedom. The maids looked uncomfortable when I entered, whispering quietly. "Mrs. Whitaker, we didn't know you'd come back," one said nervously. "He told us you weren't living here anymore." I smiled politely. "Don't worry," I replied softly. "That's going to change soon." I walked through the halls slowly, running my hand along the polished banister. Memories flooded back. Ethan running down these stairs in his school uniform, late for the bus. His laughter echoing through the house when he brought friends over. The nights I stayed up sewing his costumes for school plays. My eyes burned. All that love, and now he saw me as a burden. But something inside me steadied. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I went to my late husband's study, untouched since his passing. His old files were there, including the property documents. When Ethan turned 21, I had added his name to the deed to make him feel responsible. What he didn't know, however, was that I still held controlling ownership. My husband had insisted on that. "Never give away what you built together, Margaret," he had said. "Keep the final say in your hands." I sat there for hours, reading, remembering, and thinking. That's when the idea truly solidified. If Ethan wanted me to go live with strangers, maybe he should see what that really feels like. Over the next few days, I made a few quiet phone calls. I spoke to a realtor, an old friend of my husband's, and explained my situation. He was shocked, but understanding. "You're still the legal owner," he confirmed after checking the documents. "You can do whatever you want with it." And so I did. The mansion went on the market, privately, discreetly. I didn't even have to list it publicly. The property was so desirable that buyers appeared instantly. A young couple from out of town, both doctors, fell in love with it immediately. They wanted to make it a family home, to fill it with warmth and children's laughter. That felt right. I signed the papers within a week. It was done. The mansion, the one Ethan had thrown me out of, no longer belonged to him. The night before the buyers were due to move in, I packed a few of my old things and quietly left. I didn't tell Ethan anything. Let him discover it himself. 3 days later, my phone exploded with calls and messages. Ethan's name flashed on the screen again and again. I didn't answer. Then came the text. "Mom, what did you do? There are people in the house. They say they own it. You can't do this to me." I stared at the words for a long time before typing, "Oh, Ethan, I thought you wanted me to live somewhere else. You said I didn't belong there anymore." No response. Just silence. Later that evening, the phone rang again. I answered this time. His voice was trembling with fury. "You sold it? You actually sold my house?" "Our house," I corrected calmly. "And yes, I did. I needed to find a place where I was welcome." "You can't do this. Where am I supposed to go?" he shouted, panic creeping into his tone. "You could try what you told me to do," I replied quietly. "Live with strangers. It's not so bad once you get used to it." There was a long pause. I could almost hear him realizing the weight of his own words. Then, just before he hung up, he muttered, "You'll regret this." But for the first time in years, I felt peace. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I simply felt free. Days turned into weeks. I moved into a small cottage by the lake. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I planted flowers in the front yard, made tea every morning, and watched the sun rise in silence. I hadn't felt that kind of serenity in decades. Every now and then, I'd get updates about Ethan. He was couch surfing, borrowing money from friends, complaining about how unfair life had been to him. He never apologized. But I didn't need him to, because deep down, I knew that one day he'd understand. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but someday, when the silence got too heavy, when the pride faded, and when he realized what true loss felt like, he would remember his mother's face, standing at that doorway, heartbroken but dignified. And he would finally know what he'd thrown away. But for now, I just let the wind carry those memories away. I had done what needed to be done, not out of vengeance, but out of love that refused to be disrespected any longer. Weeks passed, and life slowly found its rhythm again. My mornings were quiet but peaceful. The lake shimmered in the early light, birds sang on the windowsill, and the scent of freshly brewed tea filled the cottage. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to shouting, entitlement, or cold silence. I was simply me again, not a burden, not an accessory to someone else's pride, but a woman who had rediscovered her own strength. Still, some nights were hard. I would sit by the fireplace and think of Ethan as a little boy, the way he used to hold my hand crossing the street, the way he'd fall asleep on my lap after a long day. It was impossible not to wonder where I went wrong. How did that sweet boy grow into someone who could look at his mother and say, "You're useless now?" One rainy evening, as I watched the drops race down the window, I got a message from an unknown number. It read, "Mrs. Whitaker, this is Laura. I'm Ethan's fiancée." My stomach twisted. I hadn't met her yet, only heard bits and pieces from others. Before I could decide whether to respond, another message followed. "Could we please talk? It's important." I hesitated, then typed, "Of course. Where would you like to meet?" The next afternoon, we met at a small cafe in town. Laura was polite, graceful, but clearly anxious. Her eyes were soft but heavy, with something, maybe guilt, maybe confusion. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Whitaker," she began. "I know things between you and Ethan have been tense, but I needed to understand what really happened. He's been telling everyone that you betrayed him." I smiled faintly. "Betrayed him? That's one way to put it." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "He said you took everything from him, that you sold the house out of spite." I took a sip of tea, choosing my words carefully. "Laura, what I did wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. Your fiancé thought money defined worth. He forgot who helped him build his life." Her eyes softened. "I believe you," she whispered. "I can see how much you loved him. But he's lost. He's angry at the world, and I think deep down, at himself too." For a moment, I just studied her face, the same kindness I once had when I was her age. "Laura," I said gently, "if you love him, Help him see that he can't fix his emptiness by taking from others. He has to build something himself. Until then, he'll keep losing everything he touches. She nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes. He won't listen to me. He says you ruined his life. I smiled again. Not with bitterness, but with calm acceptance. Then maybe life needs to ruin his pride before it rebuilds his soul. We parted with a quiet hug, and for the first time, I felt something shift. Not in me, in the world around me, as if life had set something in motion that would eventually lead Ethan back to truth. A month later, I got a letter, an actual handwritten one, something I hadn't seen from him since he was a teenager. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. I lost the job I had lined up. Laura left, and I can't find a place to stay. I know I don't deserve it, but can we talk? I read it 3 times before setting it down. My hands trembled slightly. I could feel every ounce of the mother in me wanting to run to him, to forgive, to fix everything like I used to. But I took a deep breath and reminded myself, forgiveness without change isn't love, it's surrender. I waited a few days before replying. When I did, my words were simple. Ethan, I'm glad you reached out. I will always care about you, but I can't save you from the lessons you refuse to learn. If you truly want to talk, meet me at the old park bench by Street Mary's on Sunday. Noon. Sunday came gray and cold. The park was nearly empty, except for a few children playing in puddles. I sat on the bench, my heart racing like it hadn't in years. Then, I saw him, thinner, unshaven, and carrying the weight of the world in his eyes. He stopped a few feet away, unsure whether to sit. You really came, he said quietly. I always do, I replied softly. Mothers don't stop showing up, even when they should. He sat beside me, his hands buried in his jacket pockets. The silence between us stretched for a long time, before he finally said, I don't even know where to start. Start with the truth, I said. He looked down at his shoes. I was cruel. I thought I was doing what was best for me. I thought money would fix everything. But when the house was gone, when everyone stopped answering my calls, I realized how much I'd lost. Tears welled in his eyes. You were right, Mom. I didn't just lose a home. I lost you. I swallowed hard. Ethan, I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted you to understand that love isn't owed. It's earned. Respect isn't automatic. And if you treat people like furniture in your success story, you'll end up sitting alone in an empty room. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I don't expect you to forgive me. I looked at him, this broken version of the boy I once held, and felt something inside me soften. Forgiveness isn't something I need to give, Ethan. It's something you need to live. Prove to yourself that you're not the same person who threw his mother away. He exhaled shakily, nodding again. I'll try. We sat in silence for a long time, watching the water ripple in the fountain nearby. For the first time, there were no demands, no manipulation, no anger, just truth hanging in the air between us. When he finally stood to leave, he hesitated. Mom, are you happy? I smiled faintly. Yes, because I finally learned that peace doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go. He nodded, whispered, I'm sorry, and walked away into the gray afternoon. I watched him go, not with pain, but with a strange, quiet gratitude. Because no matter what happened next, something had changed. A seed had been planted. Whether it grew or not was up to him. Weeks turned into months after that meeting in the park. I didn't hear from Ethan again, but I didn't expect to. Healing, I'd learned, isn't a straight road. It's a quiet, uneven climb filled with silence, humility, and the slow rebuilding of one's own dignity. In that silence, my life began to bloom in small, unexpected ways. The neighbors would often stop by with baskets of fresh fruit. I joined a local book club, something I hadn't done in years, and discovered the comfort of conversations that didn't revolve around stress or guilt. Every night, as the wind whispered through the trees outside my little cottage, I would think, maybe this is what peace feels like. Not grand, not loud, just steady. Then, one morning, I received a call. It was Laura again. Her voice trembled slightly as she said, "Mrs. Whitaker, I think you should know, Ethan's been trying to get his life back together. He's working at a construction company now. It's not much, but he's staying clean, and he talks about you all the time." I listened quietly, my eyes closing for a moment. "Thank you for telling me that," I said softly. "How are you, Laura?" She hesitated. "I'm okay. We're not together anymore, but I don't hate him. I just hope he finds his way. You were right. Sometimes life has to break pride before it rebuilds the soul." Her words stayed with me long after the call ended. Maybe, I thought, this was the real circle of healing. Not revenge or regret, but growth in all directions. A few weeks later, I was walking back from the market when I saw a moving van pull up near my street. A familiar figure was standing beside it, talking to the driver. My heart skipped a beat. It was Ethan. He turned and froze when he saw me. The air between us was heavy, the kind of silence that carried both shame and relief. "Mom," he said quietly. "Hi." I nodded, keeping my composure. "Hi, Ethan. What brings you here?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "I, got a place nearby. Just a small apartment. I wanted to tell you in person. I didn't want to just show up." I smiled faintly. "That's thoughtful of you." He looked at the ground, then back up at me. Can I help you with those bags?" It was such a simple question, yet it hit me harder than any apology ever could. Because for the first time, he wasn't asking for something. He was offering. We walked together back to the cottage. The sun filtered through the trees, the light flickering across the path like pieces of gold. When we reached my porch, he set the bags down gently and looked around. "You've really made this place beautiful," he said. "I like it here," I replied. "It's quiet." He nodded, then took a deep breath. "Mom, I don't know if I'll ever be able to make up for what I did, but I want to try. Not because I owe it, but because I finally understand what you were trying to teach me." I studied his face. He looked older, more grounded. The arrogance that once framed his words had been replaced by humility, the kind that only comes from losing everything that doesn't matter to realize what truly does. I stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. "Ethan, I don't need you to make up for anything. I just need you to live right, to be kind, to never forget where love begins." His eyes watered. "I won't forget, Mom." He sat with me on the porch for hours that afternoon. We didn't talk about the past or the house or the night. Everything changed. We talked about life, the world, the smell of fresh rain, the way the lake shimmered at dusk. I hadn't felt that kind of ease with him since he was a child. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Ethan turned to me. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think strength meant having control, but now I see that real strength is letting go." I smiled. That's something I had to learn too. The months that followed were filled with small, meaningful steps. Ethan would visit on weekends, sometimes bringing food, sometimes helping me repair little things around the cottage. He even started volunteering with the local community center, helping young men find work. The same son who once called me a burden was now lifting others who had fallen where he once stood. One evening, he came over with a letter. "Mom," he said, handing it to me, "it's from the bank. The old mansion is finally off the market. The new owners asked if I could help with the renovations." I looked at him with surprise. "Are you going to do it?" He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I think it's time to face that place again. Not as a king, but as a man." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "Then go. Let that house remind you of where you came from and what you became." The day he started work there, he called me during lunch break. "Mom," he said, his voice filled with nostalgia, "it's strange being here. The walls feel smaller, but the memories feel bigger. I found your old garden chair still in the backyard." I chuckled. "That chair saw more tears than sunshine." He laughed softly. "Yeah, but it still stands." Something about that line stayed with me long after the call ended. Maybe that chair was like both of us, weathered, scarred, but still standing. That evening, I sat by the fire, staring into the flames. For years, I'd carried pain like armor, afraid that if I took it off, I'd break again. But now I realized, healing wasn't about forgetting what happened. It was about remembering it differently. And as I looked around my little home, I felt a deep, quiet gratitude, not for what I had lost, but for what I had found in its place. Because in losing the house, I gained peace. In losing my son, I found him again, not the entitled man he had become, but the boy I had always loved. It was a crisp winter morning when Ethan knocked on my door again. The sky was silver, the air cold enough to make our breath visible as mist. He stood there, bundled in a worn jacket, holding a small wrapped box in his hands. His expression was humble, not the false humility of guilt, but the quiet kind that comes after growth. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded, stepping aside. The warmth of the fireplace greeted us as he entered. He looked around the cottage the way someone might look at a place of peace they'd longed for, not grand, but alive with presence. He handed me the box. "It's nothing big," he said quickly, as if afraid I'd think he was trying to make up for something again. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a small framed photo, Ethan and me, from years ago, standing in front of the old house, his arm around my waist, both of us laughing. The picture was slightly faded, but the joy in it was untouched. "I found it when I was helping clean out the attic at the mansion," he said softly. "I thought maybe it should come home." I looked up at him, my heart swelling. "Home isn't a place, Ethan," I whispered. "It's people, and sometimes it's just forgiveness." He swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. "I know. That's why I came today. There's something else I need to tell you." I waited, sensing the weight in his tone. "I'm moving," he said. "Not far, but I got accepted into a business training program. They help people start over. Small businesses, trade work, stuff like that. I think I want to build something that's mine. Honest work. Something real." My lips trembled with a proud smile. "That sounds wonderful." He looked at me as if searching for disappointment, as if part of him still believed he needed permission to change. I just wanted to say, "Thank you for not rescuing me, for letting me fall. I hated you for it at first, but now I see that was the only way I was ever going to learn to stand." I felt tears blur my vision. "It takes strength to fall and still want to rise again, Ethan. I'm proud of you." He nodded, the corners of his lips lifting slightly. "I don't deserve that yet." "Maybe not," I said softly, "but that's the beauty of love. It doesn't wait for perfect timing." He smiled then, a real one, and for a moment it felt like years of pain melted away in that tiny room. After he left, I stood by the window watching him walk down the snowy path. His shoulders were straighter now. He carried himself like someone who finally knew who he was. I whispered to the cold glass, "Be safe, my boy." And the reflection staring back at me looked peaceful, older, wiser, finally free. Months later, I received a letter. Inside was a photo of Ethan standing in front of a small workshop. The sign above it read, "Whitaker Restorations." The message on the back of the photo was short. "Mom, I'm rebuilding. Thank you for teaching me how." I pressed the photo to my chest, my heart swelling with warmth. The same boy who once told me to go live with strangers had built a life from his own 2 hands. It wasn't success in money or status. It was redemption carved from humility and love. A few weeks after that, the town invited me to a local event, a small business fair showcasing local entrepreneurs. I wasn't planning to go, but curiosity tugged at me. When I arrived, I saw Ethan there, standing proudly behind his booth, showing people how he restored old furniture, giving forgotten things a second chance. When he noticed me, his eyes widened and then softened. He walked over, wiping his hands on his apron. "You came," he said quietly. "I wouldn't miss it," I replied. He gestured around nervously. "It's not much yet, but people seem to like the work." I smiled. "You've turned broken things into beauty, Ethan. That's more than most people ever do." He nodded slowly, his voice low. "I guess I learned from the best." The crowd around us blurred into background noise. In that small space, between the scent of wood polish and the hum of laughter, a strange calm filled the air, the kind of peace that only comes when a wound has finally closed. Later that evening, as the fair ended, Ethan offered to walk me home. The streets were lit with golden lamps, and the snow crunched softly under our feet. "Mom," he said, after a long silence, "do you ever regret what happened?" I thought for a moment. No, not anymore. Pain has a purpose. It reminds us what matters. You lost everything once, but you found yourself. I lost a home, but I found peace. He nodded. "It's strange how life works." "Yes," I said. "Sometimes the walls we build to protect ourselves end up trapping us. But when they fall, we finally see the sky again." When we reached my gate, he turned to me with a smile that mirrored his childhood. Genuine, free of pride, full of light. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me even when I didn't deserve it." I placed my hand on his cheek. "A mother's love doesn't expire, Ethan. It just waits until you're ready to understand it." He hugged me tightly, and for the first time in years, it felt whole, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but love reborn from ashes. That night, after he left, I sat by the fire again, holding the photo of us he had given me months earlier. The flames danced softly, casting shadows on the walls that once knew loneliness. I whispered to the quiet, "I guess we both learned how to restore what was broken." Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of winter pine. The cottage creaked softly, not in sorrow, but in comfort, the sound of a home finally at peace. As I drifted into sleep, one thought lingered in my mind. Sometimes, love doesn't look like holding on. Sometimes, it looks like letting go, and trusting that what's meant for you will always find its way back, healed and whole.